Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Grace Barnhart, and I have Marfan Syndrome. I'm 18 years old. I am a social work major in college right now, a first-year freshman. And Marfan Syndrome is a very big part of my life. I'm a patient. I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old. Um, and I'm also a caregiver to my dad, who has survived 2 aortic dissections and a bunch of other aortic related issues and just Marfan syndrome as a whole. So, as somebody who has grown up being a caregiver and a patient, I've grown to spread awareness, learn my own boundaries, connect with the community, and things like that. And I'm just super excited to be here sharing my story with Aortic Hope today. And it is also Marfan Awareness Month, which is why I'm here today on the 4th of February. And Marfan Awareness Month is just an amazing time for this community to spread awareness, connect with others, and just kind of share why awareness is so important. So to me, my diagnosis story, I was 4 years old and went to my pediatrician, and they realized that something wasn't right. And after a little bit of testing, we went to Johns Hopkins, and they realized that my aorta was slightly enlarged, and I had a slightly dislocated lens in my eye. So for that, I went on medication, both for my aortic growth and blood pressure. And I was given glasses when I was 4 years old. And over time, I started to get chronic pain around 5th grade. I started getting pain in my rib cage and my back, and kind of taking deep breaths was a struggle for a little bit, learning how to deal with my chronic pain and my chronic illness. And it's been a long journey with my chronic pain. And it did turn out that I have costochondritis as well, on top of Marfan syndrome, which is a inflammation of the cartilage in the rib cage. So basically, if you've ever had like a migraine or a really bad headache, that's the kind of pain that I feel in my rib cage and back pretty frequently. And as anybody who has any sort of disability, you learn how to deal with it, and you know how to manage it on your own, with your own tips and tricks, to help with your issue. And mine has kind of been different stretches. I've been put on different medications to see what works best, but mainly just figuring out what's best for my body, and where I'm at setting wise. So if I'm in class, there are certain things I can't do in class that I could do at home. A lot of times if I'm in pain and I'm in my dorm room because I'm in college right now, or I'm at home, I'll put a heating pad on and take a nap. But if I'm in class, it's as simple as doing like different stretches in my chair, just to kind of stretch out my body and get a little more comfortable. It's also been a big thing in my life, just learning what I can and cannot do, both with my chronic pain, but also just Marfan syndrome in general. There are a lot of risks. And Marfan syndrome specifically is a chronic illness that affects the body's connective tissue. It is genetic, so 50% of there's a 50% chance of passing it on to the offspring. So my dad is a mutation, and was the first one in the family to have Marfan syndrome. And I was the lucky kid that got it. Thanks, Dad. So Marfan syndrome, again, like I said, has affected me both as a patient and a caregiver. But Marfan syndrome is rare. So when I tell people about Marfan syndrome, a lot of times it's, oh, I haven't heard about that, because it is rare. But there's not a single person in my life that does not know about my illness. It is nothing that I'm embarrassed about. Awareness is just such an important thing when you have such a serious condition. we lost in the Marfan community a girl a little bit older than me over the summer, and it's actually her birthday today. And this year, specifically for Marfan Awareness Month, just kind of makes us realize how important awareness is. Because if there's more awareness, there's more doctors that are aware, which can truly save lives. So with Marfan's, I have also had my eye surgeries. When I was in 6th grade, I had my lenses removed in both of my eyes. And it was a pretty easy surgery considering other surgeries that people can go through in the Marfan community. I've been lucky enough not to have any aortic or open heart surgeries in my life. And I just had those 2 eye surgeries, which did impact me throughout my whole life since the surgeries. I had the surgeries, both of them were in the same month. They were in May. And I was given these thicker glasses that I still wear. And as a child in middle school and high school, kids can be brutal. So it's been kind of a constant battle with the glasses up until I got to college, and people actually love them. So while Marfan syndrome is a physical medical condition, it does definitely affect us emotionally and mentally, dealing with the things that come with having Marfan syndrome, like the glasses. And it's very interesting how I've kind of taken my story and morphed it into a positive aspect of my life. After my surgeries, I realized that I wanted to help other people in my community. I had a friend who had childhood cancer, and from being her friend and watching that journey that she lived, there was a lot of awareness for cancer patients. And then as somebody who has another serious condition, which obviously is different and a little more uncommon than cancer, there was not as much support and awareness towards that. And as somebody who does have Marfan syndrome and a more rare condition, I wanted to bring more support and awareness to that, considering there isn't much. And when I was in 6th grade recovering from my surgery, there was only so much I could do at my young age. And I realized that I didn't want to help necessarily physically with the doctor aspects, but I wanted to help more emotionally. So over the course of about a year, I raised money by doing like lemonade stands or just doing like online fundraisers, and raised money, and eventually got Marfan Friends started. And Marfan Friends is a project that sends what I call friend packs to kids in the hospital who are either still in the hospital or recovering from a surgery or a hospital stay. And these friend packs basically have toys or stuffed animals or books or whatever this kid might want to feel a little more like heard and supported during a tough time. Kids, especially younger kids, feel alone. The first kid that ever got a friend pack was Kira, and Kira had gone through open heart surgeries on her 3rd birthday to save her life. And seeing her go through that was just heartbreaking, but so empowering, because now she's a big sister and she's like this strong little girl, and she's just amazing. And I don't think that without the support, her and other kids would be as empowered, and that awareness would be not as big without them, because it's just that these kids go through these hard times and they need that support and they need that backing up of a community. So with Marfan Friends, I've sent out about 15 to 16 friend packs throughout the years, both through the United States, and I sent a package or 2 to England, which is really cool. And one of the things that I do in order to get those packs sent out and spread the word on Marfan Friends is I have a website, and if a kid wants or a parent wants to get their kid a friend pack, all they do is fill out like a 2-minute survey. And one of the questions that I put in there is, what would you not want your children or your child to have put in a friend pack? Because if your kid is having an eye surgery like I had, maybe a book isn't the right option considering they can't see that book. So it's all about accessibility, as well as the support. So having those kids know that they're not alone, that they're supported, and that people just understand and are there for them is just so beyond important. I've created so many relationships and connections with these kids and their families. And it's just one of the most beautiful things ever. And Marfan Syndrome, the main foundation, the Marfan Foundation, does a conference every year at a different state in the United States where there's a major hospital. And those 3 or 4 days of conference is just amazing. You get to see these people that you've formed relationships throughout the years. You get to meet new people and form new connections. There were a lot of kids that and their families that I began a relationship with last summer at California. And it was just so empowering and there was so much joy and love. The girl that passed away over the summer actually passed away just a few days before conference. And those of us that did know, I think it really just empowered us even more to form relationships and love on these new kids who just got diagnosed or are finally learning about this disability that can be very scary. When you're handed those papers from the doctor, especially these parents, if their kid gets diagnosed, they get the papers, what is Marfan syndrome? And it is some scary paperwork. One of the things that doctors will say a lot at conference is, we know from a medical standpoint, the risks and things like that, but connect with those who have Marfan syndrome and can relate on a more personal level, which is one of the things that I tell people all the time at conference is listen to your doctors, but also get in touch with those in your community who have gone through the exact same thing, and get more of a personal aspect of the situation. Right now a few days ago, I was talking to this mom whose daughter wants to be a cheerleader. And a big part of my Marfan story growing up was I did cheer for 9 years of my life. And my whole thing was I wanted to be a high school cheerleader. And right before I went into high school, we realized that I had to stop. It was just too big of a risk from Marfan syndrome, and it honestly broke my heart. It was a very, very hard moment because I realized that this thing that I loved had to be taken away because of my medical condition. And it's all about, one of the things that helped me the most was taking something that just kind of shattered my world at that specific moment and change it into something beautiful. And I ended up actually managing my football team at my high school, and it was just amazing. And that's one of the things that I tell kids all the time is Marfan syndrome or your disability, don't make it stop you, okay? Don't make it stop you. Make it change, okay? So if you want to do cheer but you can't and your doctor says it's not a good idea, don't stop. Maybe take that experience and move away from cheer but go into something different. So I was still a part of that on the field football experience. While the cheerleaders were on the sideline, I was on the field. So where my story, I went from a cheerleader to a manager, yours can be a cheerleader to you get into music or something like that. But don't let your life stop and don't put your life on hold for this condition. Make sure that you are continuing with your life. Don't let it stop you. Let it empower you. And that's kind of what I've made my life out of. I've spoken on Capitol Hill twice with the Marfan Foundation, the first time when I was 15 years old, and that is just a fantastic experience as well. I have spoken at the annual conferences throughout the years. I've done panels at conference that I absolutely love, and those panels are a couple teenagers or young adults that speak to parents of these children. And it's very interesting from a patient aspect, especially as a child, who I'm now 18, but as a younger individual, talking to these parents who say, how do I explain this to my child? Or how do I support them best if I can't understand them completely from a more physical aspect. And it's probably one of my favorite things that I do in the community is connect with the parents, because as a patient, that, my parents have tried to help me, and they have, throughout my years, both with my condition, and kind of the things that come with that, and kind of share what has helped me and what I think would be best for them. And it's just amazing because I can take my story and share with the rest of the world, and my community. And it's just really all about sharing what your condition is, and really just sharing your story. And throughout these like 6 or 7 years that it's impacted my life the most, for my own physical self, I again am a caregiver to my dad, and my dad had a dissection on April 15th of 2019. And I think that was one of the bigger things that made me realize how serious this condition can be. While I've seen my dad go through many things throughout my life, that was probably one of the scariest. And my dad had a dissection on April 15th, hours after having a scan at Johns Hopkins on his aorta, every 6 to 9 months. And on his drive home was having a dissection. And I remember I was at the beach and I got the call, and my mind immediately went to, I'm not going to see him again. And my dad has kind of taken his story and what he's gone through and made me realize that just because you have these things in your life that happen doesn't mean they need to stop you. And that's kind of what I've taken from being a caregiver for my dad, who now you would look at and you would have no idea, unless he's wearing an Aortic Hope Survivor t-shirt. But my dad has gone through a lot in his medical and Marfan journey that has shaped me into who I am today. And I think him and I have kind of both bounced, advice and love off of each other, just to show that we both have very different stories. While my dad has had more of the physical, scarier aspects of it with the aorta, I've had chronic pain, and so does he. And so him and I kind of bounce ideas of like, have you tried this for your pain? Or have you tried this? Or if my dad hears about, a teenager in the community and a parent reaches out, he'll send them to me and be like, hey, you know more about this issue than I would, and I think you would connect better with them. So it's all about my dad and I kind of being a force to be reckoned with, to help other people in our community to the best ability that we can. And again, just forming those bonds and those connections is just so incredibly important and can really, really, really help those who are either brand new to the condition and don't know much, or those who just need more support. And I've also began forming relationships with my doctors where I can text my doctor or send her an email and get a quick response, because while I love spreading awareness and joy, I don't know everything. And one of the things I love doing is talking to the medical people. My cousin is actually trying to be a trauma surgeon, and he's in medical school and all these things. And it's really cool to talk to him about it because, he's in training to be a doctor and work on these types of things. But from somebody who has experience of being a caregiver, but also a patient of someone who can go through this, it's one of those things that I love in my life, being able to share with those in the community, but also those in the medical field, and be like, look, if you ever need something, if you ever have questions, please ask, because awareness is so incredibly important. I am in the middle of nowhere at school right now. I go to Longwood University, and it is in the middle of nowhere. And the closest trauma hospital is about an hour and a half away from here. But if I do ever have an issue, I'm not feeling well or whatever, I'll go to the doctor, the little health center right down the road at my school. And it's really interesting because the first time I went in there, they were like, do you have any medical issues or like things we need to know about? And I was like, yeah, I have Marfan syndrome. And the doctor said, oh my gosh, I've read about that in my books. And while that is not comforting whatsoever, it is a good learning experience to be like, well, if you ever have questions or, want to hear or learn anything from a Marfan point of view, a patient point of view, let me know. Because, they're not gonna learn without having kind of that push or that, more personal experience with it. So I love just talking to that doctor and being like, look, I have Marfan syndrome. This is how I cope with it or how I deal with it from a medical standpoint. But just spreading awareness throughout the community and to professionals is just very important. Also, creating those bonds with your doctors is also important. And while social media definitely has its cons in this community, in this world, it definitely has its pros where awareness is being spread more. We're hearing more about more famous influencers who do have Marfan syndrome, and kind of taking their stories and sharing that with the world is helping other people be diagnosed. Uh, Andy Erickson is a professional comedian, and Andy has Marfan syndrome. And Jonathan Larson, there was a movie that came out, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, maybe last year, called Tick, Tick, Boom on Netflix. It's about Jonathan Larson, who is the playwright of Rent. And Jonathan Larson died just a few days before Rent was put on its first off-Broadway show, I believe. And he died at like 36 years old from a dissection that was because of Marfan's. And Marfan syndrome was undiagnosed, but I believe that if he was diagnosed and there was that awareness at the time, that he could quite possibly still be here today. And just kind of having those connections that are like, having Marfan be diagnosed and having those medical components in place can truly save lives. And awareness isn't just, oh, let me tell my story, but really helping people in this community, and kind of seeing the different aspects of Marfan syndrome. Marfan syndrome is connective tissue disorder. It's not necessarily an eye disorder or anything like that. It is the whole body. There are people who deal with joint issues, back issues, aortic issues, eye issues, skeletal issues. There's just so much around it. And everyone has a different story, like I mentioned. So my dad has more of the aortic issues. I have more of the pain. And just kind of working through those issues and learning yourself and your body and what works best for you is just beyond important. I personally, in the past year or so, have been struggling a little bit with finding the right doctors. I had my surgeries in 6th grade to remove my lenses, but they were never replaced. So I currently do not have lenses in my eyes, hence the bigger glasses. And, when I got this surgery originally in 6th grade, there was the option of putting them back in when I was older and done growing because of the risks around my lens just reshifting and having to go in and doing surgery. And that was definitely something that I spread a lot of awareness and joy and love, and kind of show the more positive outlook on Marfan syndrome. But over the past year, I've been, sharing with people, look, my story with Marfan's isn't as bad as other people's, but there are things that I do struggle with. And that's something that's incredibly important in the Marfan community, is finding the right doctors, finding the person who's comfortable with working on a Marfan patient, because it is so rare, and just finding the right person that can operate or care for you to the best of their ability. I am lucky enough that I grew up in Northern Virginia, and Johns Hopkins is an hour and a half away from my home, one of the best hospitals in the world. And I know that a lot of people are not as lucky as I am to be so close to such a major and just wonderful hospital. So kind of sharing that point of my view also is like, I am so beyond lucky, and I want to take, my strength in sharing my story and spreading awareness to help other people in the community who might not be as lucky or fortunate as I am. But also just making those aware. Again, like I said, I'm a college student and I have two sweet names. And when I came to college, my parents were both a little bit nervous. I'm the oldest kid, so first kid you're sending off to college who also has a life-threatening chronic condition can be a lot to handle. And one of the biggest advice that I give to people who are going off to college or starting to live on their own is to have an emergency folder and have those that you live with know where it is or have it easy to access. So I would say one of my biggest physical tips beyond just, spreading joy and awareness is having that folder. So for me, my folder is right there in my closet, on the door, hung up. So if something were to happen and either there's just too much going on and I can't explain everything, or I'm unconscious or unresponsive, you grab that folder, and in that folder has all my just basic info, my name, my date of birth, my emergency contacts, my allergies. And because again, Marfan's is rare, not many people know about it, there is a page with basic, easy, but important facts about Marfan syndrome in case somebody looks at that and is like, I don't necessarily remember what Marfan syndrome is or how to help this patient to the best of my ability. And just kind of sharing that, and then my family history, because it is so important that we look at that aspect as well. While again, I haven't had any aortic issues to the extent of surgery or anything like that yet, it could possibly happen at some point in my life, because my dad has also gone through that as a Marfan patient. So having that when you're brand new to living on your own or being independent is just very important and very helpful. And a lot of people ask me, how do you take such a scary or, rare issue and, you're 18 years old and you've done all these things, right? I've spoken at conferences. I've spoken on Capitol Hill in DC twice. I share my story. I started this project, right? I've done a lot. I'm 18 years old and I've been doing this for about 6 years now. People are always blown away by it. Like, why do you do this? How do you have this strength? And my answer always is, what is my other option, right? Marfan syndrome I will have for the rest of my life. So in my mind, the only two options that I see are to spread awareness and let this empower me and help others in my community, or sit back and let it take over my life. And I feel like the first option is a little bit better. Marfan syndrome, unfortunately, is something that I deal with on a daily basis, and I'm going to have it for the rest of my life. So I'm going to kind of take that and make it into a positive thing in my life, than something scary or serious or whatever. While I do understand that it is, I want to make it, well known and have people connect and just learn more about this condition that is so, so important to me and many others. And one of the things that I like to say a lot is you can make it your excuse or you can make it your story. I could take Marfan's and say, oh, I can't do this because I have this condition. Or I could say, hey, I can't necessarily do that, but let's do this. So like I said before, with cheerleading, I could have quit cheerleading and then just gone through high school without doing anything other than school. Or I could take it and I can make it my story. I can say, look, I did cheer for 9 years and it was amazing and I loved every minute of it. But then I got to high school and I started managing the football team. I got to hang out with the football team. I got to be on the field for the games when they pop the smoke bombs with the color and they run onto the field. I got to be a part of that and it was amazing. So where I took something that, really hurt, my heart during that time where I had to let something so important in my life go, I made it into something beautiful, and I made this whole new experience and made all these new friends through this other experience in my life. And that's something that I tell people all the time is, you know, I have this condition. I'm going to make the best out of it. And all of my friends know that I have Marfan syndrome. All of my professors, all of my, literally anybody I come in contact with. I have a tattoo, and part of that tattoo is for Marfan Awareness. You know, if somebody compliments my glasses, or somebody makes, you know, a more snarky comment about the glasses, I'm like, oh yeah, well, you know, I have this thing called Marfan syndrome, and I'll spread a little bit of awareness about it. I could be out and like somebody's like, oh, what's your shirt about? And it's a Marfan t-shirt, right? Like, use those experiences in your life to spread awareness, and don't be ashamed of it. Don't be embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about. It's something that you're going to have to live with. So use it to the, you know, to the best of your ability, and, you know, spread awareness and connect with those in the community. And I honestly do not believe that I would be where I am now without those harder experiences of being a patient and a caregiver, and the way that I've kind of morphed it into my life in a positive way. And I just, anytime that, you know, a doctor will reach out to me, I have doctors that I've met at like conference who are like, can I get your contact information? And I'll get emails from them every now and then being like, hey, there's this child or this, you know, this young adult who is just diagnosed. Is it okay if I put them in contact with you? And I immediately say yes, because, you know, spreading joy and creating those bonds is just so beyond important, and can truly, truly make this journey easier for other people. It's not an easy journey, and, you know, using something so scary in my life, and, you know, making a positive aspect is not easy. You know, it was tough at the beginning, and I still struggle with things, you know, relating to Marfan syndrome, whether it be, you know, I'm having a pain flare up and I feel a little bit discouraged, or just, you know, like, I'm not going to get through this day with all this pain, or I'm not going to go do this because I'm in pain. You know, I still struggle with things like that sometimes. And that's normal and that's okay. But it's kind of using your big story and creating something bigger, to connect with the community and just share your story. But I truly do not believe I would be where I am today without Marfan syndrome and the way that I've created my life around it in a positive aspect. But I would say that when people do ask me, well, what do you struggle with most, or what is the most scary reality of having a condition like Marfan's? My answer is never, oh, nothing scares me, because that is not true. But I would say for me, the scariest aspect of Marfan syndrome is the spontaneous events. Marfan syndrome is a life-threatening condition, but the way I look at it, anything in life can be life-threatening. You know, walking across the street can be life-threatening. But I have this condition that I'm not going to let it stop me. But there are, you know, moments where things can happen, and you can be, you know, you can be tough and you can be pretty healthy in the community, and then something happens and it can change everything. So as a younger adult, or somebody who has seen my dad go through very scary and spontaneous events, it's a little, you know, it's scary for me, because it's like I could be out with my friends and then something happens. But it's all about learning how to manage it. When my dad had his dissection on the road, on the way home from Hopkins, he had a scan 3 hours prior, and the scan looked fine. And they looked at it after the dissection. They looked at the scan again, and there was nothing that showed that this should have happened or this was going to happen. So that was kind of one of the scariest moments for me. Was he was fine 3 hours prior, and then, you know, just dissected and, you know, was going through this event. So I would say that for me, that's the scariest thing with this condition. But again, I don't let it stop me. It's something that I have to deal with no matter how much I don't want to. um, and it's just one of the things in my life that I tell people the most is, yes, I have this condition, but I'm going to make it my story and not an excuse, not a roadblock in my life. But yeah, so I am Grace, and that's a little bit of my story. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I am on, Instagram and Facebook and all those things. So if you guys ever want to reach out, my name is probably on this video. I'm Grace Barnhart, and I'm 18 years old, and I have Marfan Syndrome. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Yeah, Marfan strong.
I'm muted and I'm supposed to be asking questions for you. Okay, you have a healthy chat here. First off, we're going to start with our hellos. Bo's here. He says hello. Bo's here. Somebody that you might know, Doughboy9585 says yay Grace with a bunch of party emojis. And so we said hey to Bo and hey to Doughboy. Karen says, way to go, Grace. Are you scanned for follow ups? And if so, what type and how often?
I think so. My follow-ups are usually at Johns Hopkins annually. So when I do have my appointments, I go to Johns Hopkins, and it's usually a day or two. And my doctors are super amazing, especially Gretchen. And she, considering that my dad and I both have Marfan syndrome and both need our scans, we tend to do it in 2 days. So we'll get a hotel or we'll do it in one day, and we have all our appointments that day. We just go around the hospital and see the geneticist, cardiologist, and whoever else we need.
That works out.
It does.
Somebody in here chimed in. His name is Noodles. Their name is Noodles. Great work. Awareness could have saved my precious fiance who passed away at 32 in October. So spreading awareness is important. Terry Cook has asked me to rescind the question because you answer it a little bit later. And she says, you're a ray of sunshine, Grace. Is it possible that you'll have an aortic dissection later in life?
It could possibly happen, yes. Unfortunately, that is one of the main risks of Marfan syndrome is the risk of a dissection or an aneurysm. But yes, that could very well happen.
Okay. Molly Thomas says, great work, Grace, and she gives you a big giant trophy cup in her emoji. Karen says you're a rock star. We give her hearts for that. Ryan R. dropped in and he said, oh, wow, your dad and I dissected literally a couple days apart.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Small world. And here's one from your cousin, Kevin Crowley. And he says, I remember that 2019 dissection. And then he says,
yeah.
No, I finished medical school, Grace. I got the MD LOL.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
I said, well done. Can't wait to see how she reacts. Our Tammy, our very own Tammy, says, such great information, Grace. We said, hey, Tam Tam. We love Tam Tam. And then Mr. Bill Barnhart drops in and says,
that's my dad.
I know. I said, social media brought this wonderful group together. And I responded with, the man, the myth, the legend. Hey, Bill, your girl is doing a fantastic job. Tammy comes back and says, Grace, you may have already said this, but I'm wondering, what did you decide to major in? And did your diagnosis help you decide for any or for a major?
So I'm a social work major. I'm not into medical stuff. So I spread a lot of awareness around Marfan syndrome. I don't like blood. I don't like needles. I don't like doctor stuff. So I would never go into the medical field. But I always love connecting with people and helping people through struggles as we've all gone through them. So I'm a social work major, and I want to work with kids and families. So whether that be adoption or, working in a hospital with kids in the discharging or anything like that. But I want to work as a social worker for kids and families.
Okay. That's wonderful. that's when Terry tells me that you just answered her question, and then I thought that she was Tammy, and then I was wrong. Ryan says, "Amen, awesome message." And Kevin comes back and says, "He's always loved that quote from you, Grace. Such an inspirational line." That was a little bit earlier when you were doing the make this thing your not rule your life, I believe.
Make it your story, not your excuse.
Yeah. And then Ryan here says, Gretchen rocks.
I love Gretchen.
Okay, well
Love her.
let's give them a little bit of time to see if they have any questions. But so how do you like the Marfan friends? How do you work that?
It is, so I started it, well, I started thinking of ideas of how I could help kids during my recovery, because let me tell you, eye surgery is exceptionally boring recovering from that. And I just, from seeing my dad go through things, I was like, I know some other kid has this worse. So I started thinking of ideas of how I could help. And I just was like, having kids love things, right? Kids love toys and things to do, especially during a recovery. And every kid loves getting a package. Like getting a package in the mail is so fun for kids. I'm a college kid and I love getting packages in the mail. I think that I just, from being a younger kid at that age, right? I was in 6th grade. I kind of could connect on that level. And I just, it still goes on. And people love it, and people love when I connect with their kids, just because I can understand, right? As somebody who might not have Marfan syndrome and wants to help, it's, you feel joy and you feel loved and supported, but there's not really that like super strong connection because you don't necessarily completely understand. So I've kind of used my story to help them feel empowered and supported more through someone else who has it.
That's great. How tough is college?
How tough is college? It's college is an experience for sure. It's all about learning, one, how to be independent. I came to college completely by myself. Nobody from my high school goes here. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to bring high school with me. I loved high school, but I wanted a fresh new start. So it can be a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean a lot of bit stressful the first couple weeks when you're trying to meet people, especially when you come alone, right? I don't have like multiple friends to bring with me. But I just started my second semester 2 months ago, month and a half ago, and a month ago. And it's definitely different than last semester just because you know how to work the system and meet people and things like that now. But it's really all about like time management, meeting the right people. There's a lot of people in college you might not click with. There's different groups, there's different events. So just finding where you sit, best, is difficult, but once you get a hang of it, it's wonderful. And I'm actually on the social media team at my school. So
Awesome.
we do TikToks and like Instagram posts and things like that for the school. And I love it. We do all the TikTok trends, but for our school. And then it goes on the Longwood University social media pages.
Oh, that's interesting. So Tammy says, you will make an amazing social worker. And I agree. You're probably going to kill it there. And
Thank you.
Your dad's got the best here. Your dad says, I'm glad to see you keeping your room clean, or at least cleaning it up to be on camera.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks. I cleaned my room today. I cleaned it today.
I believe you. I'm on your side.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any parting thoughts? Anything else you want to share?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, why don't you thank these lovely people for...
Yes. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Again, if you have any other questions or comments or want to get in touch, I'm on Instagram. I have a Marfan account, which is just Marfan Strong, Marfan Strong. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm Grace Barnhart 2018. I'm on Facebook. I'm on all of it. So if you guys want to reach out, just shoot me a message, and I'd love to connect with you all and answer any questions, or just if you have any questions on Marfans, or want to learn anything else about me, just let me know and we can connect.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
There you go.